wrong. So, from culture to nature, with one important difference. Should nature be accessible to all? The entire day we are listening, everything should be accessible to everybody, is the main philosophy. Should nature be accessible to everybody? Not if we want to keep it for future generations, right? The issue with the nature is that constantly, in general, not just in terms of accessibility for persons with disability, but accessibility to humans in general, when it comes to nature, the key challenge is balancing between the accessibility, the desire to enjoy nature, and the basic need to actually protect and conserve that same nature for the future. What to do? We don't have a definite answer related to that question. What we can say that for human beings, with or without disabilities, nature sometimes can be very threatening. For nature and nature attractions, we have different types of barriers, not just physical ones in terms of uneven terrains, in terms of lack of adapted trails, in terms of this type of landscapes that you want to conquer or not. We have also information barriers, of course, related to the limited information, not just to people with disability, to everybody. You see a map, you have a trail, do you know exactly every step of the way what you are going to encounter when you are in nature? I don't think so. Not even in the city park, a little less within the real wild nature. And of course, there are often service gaps when we are talking about accessibility to nature in terms of lack of trained staff, lack of support services. Every year, every tourist season, at least in Croatia, we are witnesses of different types of dangerous situations that tourists, visitors engage in when they want to enjoy the nature. So what can we do? What can be done to make this nature more accessible, if we want it to be more accessible? First of all, when we at least decide to intervene, let's create trails, let's adapt paths, let's do it having in mind not just the persons without disabilities, but also help a little bit for persons with certain disabilities to also enjoy that same nature. How to do it? Through adaptation, when you actually intervene and modify existing environments, or when you accommodate, when there is no need really, unless you want to use dynamite and go directly through this stone wall, then you need to accommodate, you need to provide some alternative route for those who cannot climb this lovely stone wall. You can use adapted equipment, you can use another way, but you have to keep in mind that not everybody is able to do everything that you think it's necessary to come from point A to point B in natural environment. What else? Back to basics, back to the morning universal design. When you are intervening, when you are building something completely new, let's make it from the very start accessible to all. Let's make it barrier-free. Let's make it step-free. And of course, either you decide on each of these options, you need to give exact and up-to-date information so that people, visitors, know what to expect. This information should be accessible, should be web accessible, should be digital accessible, and should be also adaptable for the use of assistive technologies. This is also very important. Okay, examples of good practice. This is an example from Slovenia. Has anybody visited this Pohorje Treetop Trail? It's not too far away from here. So, the builders decided to intervene a lot. So this is completely made out of wood, this entire elevated trail, and this viewpoint. It's completely barrier-free. It's accessible for persons in wheelchairs. It's accessible for children in strollers. You don't see it well on these pictures, but most of these fences are made of glass. So you are safe, but again, you can enjoy the nature. Or from this transparent wire, you can see it here. So this is a nice example how to really, when you are intervening, how to apply universal design principles and create something that is accessible to very various and different types of visitors, different target groups. Next example comes from Finland, a land of vast forest areas, where there is a huge accent on being in nature and enjoying the nature. And in terms of adapting the paths and trails in Finnish National Parks, they decided to intervene a little bit more and make it a wider and less steep in order to also be used by persons in wheelchairs, but of course without overdoing it, without actually, using heavy equipment and heavy machinery to make it flat. That's why here you have accessible information for all of those that need it on two types of trails. You have trails that are accessible, meaning that even people in wheelchair can independently go through it and enjoy it. And you have a little bit different trails, demanding trails, when you already have information that you will need help. If you are in a wheelchair, somebody will have to come with you, and through certain elements, through certain parts of the path, they will have to push you. Moving a little bit closer, Trentino Alto Adige. So this is an example how to make a very non-accessible environment more accessible. When you hear the word mountains, when you hear the word Alps, I don't think you have in mind accessibility, am I right? Not really. Not even for a person without any disability. Not everybody would maybe go into such type of adventure. Well, Trentino region is making very, very significant efforts in making their mountains more accessible, not by intervening, but by using different types of equipment adapted to this severe mountain environment, and of course using specialized and well-trained employees who actually help people with different kinds of disabilities to reach special natural environment that usually would not be accessible to them. Here we are not talking about completely independent type of trails or itineraries, but still they have a high value because they are really allowing persons who wouldn't be able to go through such terrain to actually enjoy it. From the mountain to the beach. Not a long trip in this area. So the beaches are very, very specific areas. We can talk about them in terms of natural attractions, but more and more they are also man-built attractions because lots and lots of interventions and investments are being done in that coastline areas where we all know that vicinity to the sea and using of the beaches has very positive well-being and health impacts. What else is important to say, not just for beaches but also for mountains? They are not just important for tourists. They are of extreme importance for local residents. They are part of their identity. They are part of their culture, let's call it like that. And it's really important to see how to make them more accessible and more inclusive to all. Having in mind that beaches are very complex systems, very economically lucrative systems, we need to have in mind that there is a struggle always between economic use and preservation of nature, or what of the nature has been left after all the interventions. So therefore, often this tool of carrying capacity is being used to establish how many people can be on the beach at the same time without damaging it and also without, having a bad experience of being overcrowded. What else needs to be taken into consideration? There is a different legislative framework regarding the maritime domain laws. What can you do in the beach area? What can you invest in? What you cannot do. And finally, depending on who is investing, there is also a challenge related to different management models, so different concession models. My colleagues and I did a little research on this, and we found out that the legislative and the practice is extremely different in Croatia and in Italy. In Croatia, we have a policy of free access to beaches for everybody in terms of payment, but the beaches are not very accessible when we are here talking about different types of disabilities. While in Italy, everything is much more oriented on economic use. So I'm guessing that all of you are used to paying some kind of entrance fee or a ticket when you are going to Italian beach, am I right?
Here in Trieste. Not here in Trieste.
Wonderful. You are closer to Croatia. That's great. Maybe not always in terms of investing in equipment for accessibility. So let's see some examples and let's see how to make beaches more accessible. Here is the list of the most basic equipment that is being used to improve the physical accessibility of beaches. So we have beach mats, we have lifting cranes, we have amphibious wheelchairs, all this for persons with reduced mobility. Of course, when you are at the beach, you need to have adapted changing rooms, you need to have adapted toilets. It's basic need. And back to software, you need to have trained lifeguards. Being ready, being there, and being ready to help you in case something happens. But how will you get to the beach? Now we are back to that it's not enough to make that little area accessible like hotel, like a beach. You need to think wider, you need to think of the system and all the links in the chain like Natasha and many other speakers mentioned. Okay, here is the visual representation of these aids. So beach mats, very useful, especially for large flat beaches. Not just for people in wheelchairs, but also for little kids, strollers, people using walking devices. You can do the similar thing with concrete, but then it's more permanent. You can see it here. These are several types of amphibious wheelchairs that are extremely useful for people that usually use wheelchairs, but of course cannot enter with their wheelchairs to the beach or to the sea. And here is a lifting crane. When we speak of the lifting cranes are important equipment, but they require certain preconditions. You need to have a flat and elevated place that you can build them on. This place needs to have an access for wheelchairs, so there is something better than lifters nowadays, and it's called C-track systems. Have you heard of C-track systems?
Yeah.
Yeah? Yeah, we have it in Croatia as well. They are really great because they are technical solutions that allow people with reduced mobility to actually transpose themselves to this chair and independently go to the sea. So they don't need help. This is extremely beneficial for their dignity and autonomy. And also, as you can see, this is completely mobile structure. So it's not very, very damaging for the environment. It's not a permanent structure, it's something that you can install and later deinstall if necessary during the winter. So this is something that we can call innovation in terms of accessibility. Good practice examples. First of all, information on the accessibility of beaches. Example from far, far from here, Australia Accessible Beaches Project. The Association of Persons with Disability is doing a constant and continuous and very quality work on maintaining this registry, this online beach directory, with most of the beaches on Australian coast and very specific details on what to expect in terms of accessibility equipment in each of these beaches. This is very important. Many similar registry has been created worldwide, Europe-wide. Usually the problem is in fact that they go out of date very soon. If you do not update them regularly, if you do not do field checks to see is the beach still accessible, is the equipment still in function, you have a lot of accessible beaches just on paper. And this is even more dangerous, like my colleague said, this is even more dangerous than being honest and stating, okay, this beach is not accessible. Please have that in mind. Thinking that something is accessible, but it's not. The next question, the next example is not that very pretty, but we put it here because we've noticed that in most of the examples that we are using and that we are finding online, the focus is on persons with reduced mobility. And this is the example of the beach that is more focused on persons with visual impairments. So it's not maybe the most attractive beach you have ever seen, but it's flat, it's paved, and it has tactile guidelines towards the sea entrance. During the summer, during the season, it also have these buoy barriers, borders, that prevents you from swimming too far. And it's not created just in the middle of nowhere for God knows who. This is very important. It's part of the system. It's in the immediate vicinity of a hostel that is already adapted to persons with visual impairments. So here we have example of accommodation, but also another attraction to visit. And this is a very successful example. It's situated in Premantura in the Istria region in Croatia. Now something closer to you. Liljana Sabljadorović, am I spelling it correctly?
Yeah.
We decided to select it as a very nice example of beach that is well using its flat surface and its very beneficial landscape for accessibility. And also this additional detail also was very interesting for us, this inclusive playground that is available for beach users and that is also designed that also children with different disabilities can use it equally and practically play together with other kids immediately in vicinity of the sea. Is it a good example? I think somebody, I think maybe you, were mentioning that you are working on this project.
Yeah, we worked on this.
Work.
Yeah, we finished this last year.
Okay. The idea is to put this not to tell you from this region about how this is great, but to ask you to share maybe your experiences. On the paper, this is beautiful. There are 8 different municipalities that participate.
The municipalities that are on the coastal area of the region of Trentino.
Yeah. And big investments were actually made in different type of equipment and enhancement of accessibility.
Yeah, first of all, we invest a lot on the mapping. So we wanted to know how was the situation about accessibility. So which were the tourist resources, accessibility, yes, no, how much, and then we work with the municipalities to improve that. And so we could, for example, buy this special chairs to go in the sea. These are the jobs, but there are also the sand and sea. And we could also buy a lot of ways to go to the plastic waste we showed before, and some the changing cabins, also accessible changing cabins, and in Lignano, in Grado, in Muggia, in Trieste, not because you don't have beaches here, you have palmies, something different. And but in Muggia, for example, yes, we brought some of them, and we worked also with museums. We worked with natural areas, so we have the possibility to do a lot of things thanks to a ministerial project.
Beautiful.
Now we are working on the mountains, the second pole of this project.
Well, that's great. See, the examples are showing by themselves, so thank you.
If you want to know something more, you can go on the website that is Venezia Giulia Bertucci, and there you can find all the data, everything and other information about.
We found it. We looked it up as entire project and decided to put it here, but to hear a little bit more about it from you. So thank you.